Hello, everyone. Welcome back again to another episode of BanyoThoughts. This is your host, Gian, and today we are going to venture into the imaginative world of Korean and Chinese webtoons. Two of my favorite, or you can say my happy place. No? Whenever I read them, I really enjoy it. It's like my dopamine for the day. No? And in fact, I think I'm addicted to reading webtoons and especially the Korean ones. But I also enjoy not just reading the webtoons or the cartoons or the comic panels, but also reading the light novels that go with it. So most of them, if you're not familiar with webtoons, are actually written first, and then they are then made into a graphic novel. So these are the webtoons. So anyway, I'll discuss that later on about the history of webtoons, what it's all about. But for now, I'd like to share to you the reason why I started getting myself involved or getting myself obsessed with Korean webtoons or Chinese web novels. I think in the beginning we were, if you're like me, growing up with One Piece, we are all familiar with the Japanese manga. So this is actually something similar to the Japanese manga. I think the Japanese manga is usually done in black and white, and it's we have the popular ones. You have One Piece, you have Naruto. Um, what else? You have Bleach. Uh, to name a few that are really popular amongst, I think, generally in the entire world. But that's where it all started. I mean, of course, growing up watching One Piece is really like and until now they're still being done by Oda. It's still amazing for me. But then I got in. I probably one of the reasons why I found Korean web novels is because I think I started reading way back. I'm not so sure, 2016 or 2015, but I'm not so sure when I started reading that. But I got to read one of the works called Noblesse. It was actually written by a South Korean author by Jiho Son, and it came out. Yeah, I think it came out. If I'm not mistaken, it came out that even as early as 2013. I think, I'm not so sure. 2013 up to 2017 or 2019. I'm not so exactly sure the exact, but it's really one that caught me attention because it's the typical comics like your manga, but this time it's colored. And Noblesse is a an interesting story. It was based in Korea, but the main character is actually a vampire. So the word noblesse is actually a French. I think it's a French word for nobility, and it stars. It's basically the protagonist is the head of the vampires, who's been asleep for like 820 years already. So and that's how and he woke up in the modern world already, like where there's cell phones, where there are schools, where there are classes. Of course, as a vampire, you never aged, right? So that's how the story started, and it started progressing by revealing the different characters of the story. So that actually caught my attention because it's the first time I've actually seen a South Asian novel that is actually colored. So may kulay siya, hindi siya yung typical na black and white that when we start reading One Piece or Naruto, it's usually in black and white. It's only the time when they do the covers that they actually make color them, right? But generally, the whole cartoons is actually, or the whole comic strips is basically black and white. But this time it's colored, so that attracted me. And the storyline is really good. Like, I don't know, but as when I got exposed there, then I started um, reading different other novels that were made by it started out as light novels, and then they started making manhwas out of it, and they started making webtoons out of it. The author of Noblesse actually made a new one now. It's called Elicide, and and packed I made it into my the cover photo. I made it into my identity board because the main character Kaizen is one of my favorite characters. Super cool dude, super cool powers. I mean, uh, it's and the storyline is really for me very very good. Um, the other ones that I started reading because of the same because of Elicid and because of Noblesse are from different authors already, and you can actually go if you were to start googling them, you can actually see many of these, and the cartoon, the design and the drawings is really good, like really really good. Sobrang ganda talaga na hindi ka like quality talaga, quality. Napapaisip ko na minsan as a Filipino, napapaisip ko na minsan that how come we don't have something similar to that? How come we don't have something as as great as that? So baka meron because I'm not yet exposed to the Filipino ones, because I think the reason why I get attracted to many of these webtoons or manhwas, it's because of the storyline. The storyline is good. I mean that some of them are very unique. Although some of them are the typical stories where the person dies and regresses back to the earlier years and gains again superpowers, etc., etc. But nonetheless, the struggle in the beginning, it's always like they have to work it out. They figure out their strengths, they figured out their abilities, and they grow over time, right? So typical like parang Naruto rin, hindi lang si Naruto, hindi mo siya gano'n ka OP in the beginning, but because of hard work and training, he becomes like one of the very strong character. So yun nga, so that's one, no? Aside from the graphic novels being colored, the second one is of course the storyline. The third, you discover as you start reading it, you discover that there is actually a light novel that goes with it. What is a light novel? Meaning it was actually written first in like a typical book, and it's normally published in either, not so sure, I think in Naver they usually publish it, or in Kakao, mga Korean websites, and it's written first before it's converted into a graphic novel. And that's when I started reading the first one I've ever read. I don't know if they continue the manhwa for it, but it's the Moonlight Sculptor, and it's like a virtual reality game where the character where you enter into a pod and you become like you enter into a virtual world and you have a character. So he had one of the most weirdest professions, which is sculpting. So, but he becomes one of the most powerful profession. It becomes one of the most powerful professions in the light novel, because whenever he sculpts something, he can basically bring it to life. So whatever abilities, let's say a dragon, the abilities of the entire dragon. So it becomes really OP in the very end. And then I started reading I Overgeared. Overgeared is one example of another very good very good writing. I think it's now on its 2,000 chapters already. So most of them have like really so much chapters. And one of the most popular one, I think, that became like a obsession during the pandemic was Solo Leveling. So Solo Leveling is started out as a light novel that became a graphic novel, which good plot, good storyline. Although the ending, I found it lang. I don't know. It's just like for me, it was like after all of that, this is the ending. But I think if you go read it again, the author created a sort of an epilogue storyline where he continues the story of the protagonist at the later on. So medyo doon nag-evolve, parang nagkaroon naman ng I don't know, maybe the fan service siguro is maybe the reason why he did that, because the ending of the previous one was parang bitin. So I think he continued it, and so that's why there's a continuation of the story. But if you read it, and if you go through the graphic novel of it, it's really good. Read the design, the drawing, everything is on point, to the point that now I think they're making it into a animated series. So if you follow K dramas, if you follow uh Korean novellas, okay, most there are some of those shows that actually came from um webtoons, or it started out as light novels. I think the one that is the most popular, if you search for it, is actually True Beauty, that stars Cha Yun-woo, one of the most handsome Korean actors in I think in the world. It's also a member of a K-pop group as well. So that that's how influential, or how massive really the growth of Korean light novels has evolved over the past, I think, 5 years, if I'm not and now it has gone really global already. So I'm thankful that I started out in the very beginning, and I was exposed to many of these authors already. In fact, I look forward reading them on a day-to-day basis as much as I can. Especially the light novels. The light novels for me is just fantastic. They have a very wild imagination. And I think I mentioned it to you already in the previous podcast that one of the things that I started doing recently is creating my own book. It's called The Last Portal series. So there are 3 volumes of that. I'm writing the first one, which is The Last Portal Adventures of the Mystery Cafe. The reason why I started doing that is, one, because of after reading so many novels, like growing up as a kid, reading books, because I've really been a big fan of um, J.R.R. Tolkien. I'm a big fan of David Eddings, Anne McCaffrey, um, Terry Brooks, and these are all Western writers. So they have a different style of storytelling, and many of, like, for example, many of the novels nowadays are actually inspired by these guys, meaning like elves, dwarves are actually taken from them already now. So if you read new novels nowadays, the inspirations come from the major amazing writers like J.R.R. Tolkien. And now the majority of the Korean ones, or the Asian novels, have that sense of parang similarity to these Western ones. So kaya tuwa rin ako because it also reflects on the Asian culture, which is kind of uniquely different. I mean, different and unique from our Western counterparts. So that's the reason why I started reading, because I got influenced and I started writing my own version of it. And I continue to read because there's many things about character development that I enjoy in most of these writings. So how they develop the personality of the character, how they develop also the expressions of the character, how they develop also the relationships of each character, and that gives us a sense of like who they are. And for me, when I started reading, it's like they're real persons already in my head, no? So, and there are inspirations. So at the end, like I draw out a lot of good things from reading web novels. It's not for me. It's never a waste of time, or it's not like. In fact, I enjoy reading more than watching Netflix. In fact, in Netflix, if I ever watch an episode of Netflix, maybe just 10 to 15 minutes, I'm already like zoned out. But whenever I get myself involved with a book, a light novel, or a graphic novel, or a webtoon that really sparks interest, I consume it like greatly. So I don't know, for you guys, if you guys ever tried, or if you haven't really started reading any webtoon or light novel or any of these Korean and Chinese ones. Yeah, I was speaking basically. Sorry, I was speaking basically of Korean ones. There are amazing Chinese novels as well, and there are even more chapters. Like some of them can go up to 4,000 chapters, and it's crazy. And some of them have been years in the making, like 3, 4, 5 years in the making. And the author every day publishes one chapter. So can you imagine how much time and imagination and resources were put into that creating of that story. And my mom actually is loves to read Chinese novels. And in fact, there's this one Chinese novel. Can't remember the name of the Chinese novel that came out in, not, I think in Netflix or in Amazon or in HBO, but I'm not so sure which of those three video platforms. But it came out that she binged watched it because it was so good, and it was done in by the Chinese studio. So it's as if the whole story now you can actually see it in live action. So the abilities, their flight, their fight scenes, their magic. So it's purely very visually entertaining. So you know, so even my parents. So my parents is like who also loves who's I think she's my mom is very much a fan also of reading light novels. Now in this my entire family is like loves reading them. So I think I'm the one who consumes most more than most of them, because I discover a lot of other books, and other webtoons as I read. No, so yeah. So I just wanted to share that, because at the end of the day, it's like my my dopamine. It might be your dopamine as well. It make you happy hormones. It's really good. It's not a. There's so many things you can learn from it. Like I don't know, like typical of Naruto, you have all these things about friendships and stuff, or One Piece, protecting your friends and freedom. Similar to that, the theme is always the same. There's always a universal theme that goes with it about friendship, about hard work pays off in the end, and it's one of the reasons why I read it because if you put effort into something, for sure there will be an output. There should be growth after that. So, and that's the reason why I get inspired by reading web novels. Not just because it's entertaining visually, but because there's always a lesson to be learned in reading them. No, so at least for me personally, aside from like having having like the good laugh, especially if it's a comedy kind of thing. So if there's anything I would recommend, if you guys wanted to start, if you ever start reading any graphic novel, um, you can actually go and check out um, Asura Scans. It's ASURACSCANS. So Asura Scans. Basically, they do translations of these web novels and they post it on their website. So some of the good ones, you can actually start reading. It's called The Greatest Estate Developer or The World's Best Engineer. It's super laugh trip. If you actually read it, it's like wala kang tigil sa katawa after reading it. Solo Max Level Newbie is one of my favorite as well, and I look forward reading it every week. Another one would be Trash of the Count's Family. Must read, must read, must read, especially the light novel. It's a really must read. Return of the Mount Who Was Sect is also one really, really good um, martial arts novel, and it's a light novel, and it really gives you a background of I think the culture of martial arts. So I think these are some themes that come out in many of the manga about how the Buddhist sect have their own martial art style, how the sword sects have their own martial art style, and this will actually give you that as well. So something to check out. What else I would recommend? I think those are some of the few ones you can start reading. The rest you can just explore them on their website because many of them are really, really good, and many of them are worth worth reading. And the storylines is pretty unique as well. So, like, what if you were brought into like another place and this is your only ability, for example? So sometimes ganun ka weird yung kanilang mga concept. There's topics about cooking, about being a chef. So all these things. So if you ever get a chance to or if you ever find time to read during your break or during your holidays or your vacation, or I don't know, your vacation leave, whatever. If you ever have time to, instead of watching Netflix, go and check out webtoons or web novels. So that's about it, no? So, oh wait, forgot. I wanted to introduce to you just a bit of a history lang, so at least you get an idea of um who started out this webtoons, no? It's actually webtoons. If you define it, it's actually a platform for independent artists to create and share comic style creations. So that's basically the definition of webtoons. It originated in South Korea. It's essentially an online comics. It's usually in Japan. It's usually printed out, and you can buy the actual comic book. But here in Korea, they started the webtoons as mostly online. No? And unlike the typical comics, which is you read from left to right, sorry, right to left. This is read vertically, so you read from top to bottom. So and you scroll down. It's really designed for mobile devices. So it started out in the 1990s in South Korea, and it was just basically in Korea lang. But when they started introducing it to the United States, it became super popular because I think uh, Stan Lee of Marvel was able to parang collaborate with them. And the one who started out in Korea is actually called a company called Naver, and I think it's a very very popular Korean website. So yeah, from there it progressed basically tuloy-tuloy na siya over the years. So 2014 they started with collaboration with Stanley, and then eventually, if you're familiar with SoftBank, it's like an investment firm. They started investing on it as well in 2016, and then it started. They bought this company called Wattpad, where writers make stories. That is in 2021. So they acquired Wattpad, and then that basically during the pandemic, the whole Webtoon platform grew massively, and it got exposed to not just in the US, not just in Asia, but in Europe as well. So that's about it. So just like a trivia for you guys. It's good to know about how Webtoon started. So that's it for my episode of Banyo Thoughts, and hope you guys learned something new about it. And if you ever get a chance to read any of these webtoons, please go and check it out. So thank you so much. As always, thank you so much for listening to this episode. I appreciate you guys. Until the next episode, see you guys. Bye bye.